Thank you to everyone who has shown so much support and interest in my new voiceover edits for the podcast for my cozy crime novels. Because you love it so much, I have decided to go back to chapter 1 for Stone Cold and redo all the previous chapters of this novel just for you. Enjoy. Stone Cold, Chapter 1. The bloodied crime scene was complete chaos. Snow found herself having to delicately tiptoe between puddles, specks, splashes, and drops of the victim's fresh red blood. She paused for a moment, bouncing painfully on her toes, while eagerly searching the polished concrete floor for a clean enough area to stand on. Finally, she spotted one and courageously took a little leap to get to it. Once she had landed, she stood tall and straightened her blazer, hoping that no one witnessed her slightly awkward landing. She placed her hands in her pants pockets, feeling a little more confident. She glanced around the room, thinking that she had the feeling when she woke up this morning that today was going to be the kind of day when she would need to wear her favorite black pantsuit, and she was right.
What a mess,
she thought. Of course, her careful consideration in maneuvering around the crime scene was somewhat linked to not wanting to disturb any evidence that would lead to a murderer being hauled off the streets. But her baby blue stilettos were also brand new, and she did not want to be spending the better part of her evening cleaning someone else's DNA from her latest fashion investment. Besides the chaos and confusion of blood splattered everywhere, in the middle of the cold, gray floor of an upmarket bridal boutique lay a bride, her bloodied wedding gown splayed around her in a mess of tulle and satin, making her look like a deformed angel of sorts.
Who do you think did it?
Snow squeaked as the unexpected voice spoke in her ear. Blushing a little, she turned to look at the tall detective standing behind her. Detective Noakes, an athletic woman in her early 40s, was well known for her effectiveness in getting cases solved quickly. She looked at Snow with her deep green eyes and her straight brown hair somehow perched in the perfect ponytail. A formidable, strong woman. Snow knew her well enough to know that she was simply asking her the question because she had to, not because she placed a stake in her thoughts on such matters. After all, she was just a mumbo-jumbo head doctor who liked to play at crime scenes, and Noakes was a real detective with years of experience behind her.
It was the seamstress,
Snow responded nonchalantly.
How can you be so sure?
Noakes asked.
Besides the pair of fabric shears sticking out of her chest.
They both took a moment to stare at the shining black metal handles of the scissors, which appeared to be out of place in the middle of the scene of red and white.
Have you ever had to deal with a bride-to-be, detective?
She looked back at the detective who was still eyeballing the murder weapon, shaking her head slightly.
Can't say I have.
The term bridezilla exists for a reason. Some women manage to transform into complete, irrational monsters the closer their wedding day gets. It can be enough to drive anyone over the edge.
Snow took another glance at the mutilated corpse of the bride, sprawled across the floor of the bridal shop's change rooms. Feeling somewhat grateful that this was one mess she would not have to scrub clean, she looked back at the detective.
I imagine this dressmaker has had his or her fair share of bridezillas to deal with, but this was just one too many. The sheer disaster of the scene describes the passionate outburst of someone who just could not take it anymore.
Good call,
the detective said, patting her lightly on the back as if to congratulate her on a simple observation. Snow felt her body tense, and she winced, her eyes closed for a few seconds at the sudden human contact. She opened her eyes to see the detective pulling her hand away half apologetically with a look of whoops on her face. As if on cue, a uniformed police officer walked by with a short, round woman in handcuffs. Her hair was disheveled. She was covered in blood, but the look on her face was an expression of free at last, a look of glorious relief. Snow envied her a little.
The truth is, we already knew it was the seamstress. Miss Maureen Edgar given us her full confession, but that's not why we called you over,
Noakes said, walking towards the nearby change room cubicles, with their gaudy velvet curtains and unflattering fluorescent lights. One of the lights flickered briefly, and Snow was suddenly aware of the cold air from the aircon on her face. Feeling a little annoyed at the games being played by the detective, she looked at her, waiting for her to divulge the truth as to why she'd been called to the crime scene. One of the change room's curtains was being tugged open, and behind it on an uncomfortable wooden bench sat a thin woman with pale skin and short black hair.
She only wanted to speak to a forensic crime scene psychologist, and since you are the only one I know of, I thought I would give you a call.
Snow could feel herself bringing her hands together and wringing them slightly. Her eyes darted towards the building's exit. Just outside, another uniformed officer was looking after her beloved greyhound, who also acted as her therapy dog, an all-round sense of safety and comfort. Something about the look in the pale woman's eyes made her feel like she desperately needed him. She looked back at the woman sitting behind the curtain and did her best to stand up straight and hold her composure. There was a reason why she didn't work with the living, at least not directly anyway. As much as she loved getting to understand the inner workings of the mind, she didn't care to actually work face to face with anyone. Figuring people out was easy, dealing with them, not so much. It's why she stuck to the safety of research forensic psychology, avoiding clinical psychology and the practice of dealing with people in intimate settings. After a quick check of the cold, concrete floor, ensuring she would not trample on any precious blood drops or puddles, she took a step forward and looked at the woman.
What do you want?
She blurted out rudely, surprising herself.
What she means is, how can she assist you?
She heard the detective moving to her side as she gave the explanation.
You must excuse Dr. Hiver. She's not particularly good with people.
Seemingly unaffected by her approach, the woman stood up and offered her a warm smile.
That's okay,
She said, keeping her gaze on Snow, her hands lightly holding onto the handles her large, red leather, vintage tote bag that hung from her shoulder, not moving forward to even remotely gesture for a handshake in greeting. Snow already liked her a little.
Why are you here?
Snow asked, feeling slightly but only slightly more relaxed around this new person. The fluorescent light flickered again, and Snow noticed the light's reflection in the woman's unusually dark eyes.
I was hoping we could talk.
The strange woman said in a soft tone, standing incredibly tall and still.
But not here. There's a coffee shop across the road. Shall we go there?
Almost as if she sensed Snow's hesitation, she added.
It's not terribly busy, and I've been there before.
She paused, as if for effect.
It's usually quite clean.
Snow took in her words for a moment, feeling a little unsettled at how well the young woman could read her. She looked at the detective, who looked a little perplexed and shrugged her shoulders.
I believe she has already given her statement and both of you are free to go.
Noakes smiled a little as if glad to hand off the witness to Snow, and slowly turned and walked back towards the bloody bride in the background.
Fine, but I have my dog with me.
Snow reluctantly agreed to the change of scenery.
That's okay. I believe they have an area outside where we can sit for a brief meeting.
Then, without saying anything more, the unusual woman with black hair walked off, leading the way for Snow to follow, as if she no longer had a choice. She took one last nervous glance back at Detective Noakes, who seemed to be looking their way, trying to figure out what all this was about. As soon as she realized Snow was looking at her, she quickly tried to busy herself with details of the crime scene. As Snow stepped out of the bridal shop into the dry heat of the late morning sun, her day was immediately made better by the sight of this large black dog wagging his tail as she approached. She never knew that she could love a creature quite so much until he came into her life. The large, black, magnificent beast stared at her. Shadow was the perfect specimen for a powerful greyhound. The uniformed police officer handed her his lead and gave him one last scratch behind the ears before walking off. Snow looked down at Shadow. His light brown eyes stared back at her, and she could tell that he loved her as much as she loved him.
Sorry, my boy, but we have one last stop to make before we go home.
She kissed him on the top of the head. His fur had been warmed by the sun. She took a deep breath of his scent.
Better than a human baby's head.
she thought to herself before tugging at his leash to guide him in the direction of the coffee shop. By the time Snow made her way across the road to the coffee shop, the strange woman had already seated herself at one of the white plastic square tables outside. She gestured with her hand to the open seat across the table for Snow to join her. Snow glanced around the coffee shop. It was indeed quite empty, with most of the patrons sitting inside, busying themselves on computers and smart devices while sipping large mugs of hot beverages. Clearly, they had been attracted by the large plastic sign that said "Free Wi-Fi" in bold black text. She tugged at Shadow's leash and made her way to the table. He too seemed quite wary of this new person and reluctantly followed behind her as she walked.
He is beautiful.
The woman with the black hair said, gesturing towards Shadow as Snow sat down on the white retro-style plastic chair. Snow kept her sunglasses on, partly for the glare of the sun on the white plastic furniture, partly to hide the mistrust she was sure her eyes were showing. She made her way over to the table and sat across from the woman, Shadow immediately lying down at her feet. For a moment, she felt as if she was in a 1970s-style spy movie as the woman sitting across from her pushed a thick brown envelope across the table. There must have been a look of confusion on her face, as before she could say or do anything the woman said,
It's payment. I'm retaining your services.
Snow felt a wave of panic for an instant, but then curiosity kicked in. Why would a person she has never met before request to meet a forensic psychologist? At a crime scene for a crime she was apparently not involved in, only to retain the services of the psychologist. Surely she must have some secret she is hiding.
I assume you're looking for some kind of doctor-patient confidentiality.
Snow said, knowing full well her reaching forward and picking up the envelope would seal the deal. She found herself at a crossroads. She could pick up the envelope and hopefully open the mystery of this unusual woman sitting in front her, still with her warm smile. Or she could take Shadow home and walk away from the whole thing. It all felt very strange, but her curiosity was beginning to get the better of her. What was all the secrecy for?
But you don't even know what my fee would be.
Snow said out loud in a surprisingly confident tone.
Does it matter?
The strange woman responded. She liked to have things clean and simple, and although she was very strongly tempted to walk away, she loved unraveling a good mystery even more. She saw her hand move forward and pick up the envelope before her brain had even fully agreed to do so.
Well, I'm in it now.
She thought to herself.
Good.
The woman with the black hair said, as the waiter, a tall, gangly young man, no doubt a student from the local college, came by to take their drink's order. The woman didn't hesitate to order a cappuccino with cream. Snow liked the way her presence demanded attention. She found herself staring at her, watching her every gesture, which exuded a rather attractive level of confidence. When it was her turn to order, Snow looked up at the waiter and felt so clumsy saying just one word.
Americano.
She looked back at the woman. Her cheeks felt a little flushed as the waiter walked away while still making notes in his order book. Shadow gave a soft growl, as if to let him know that he was laying under the table, his head resting on Snow's blue stilettos.
My name is Teresa May.
The woman across from her said as soon as the waiter was out of earshot.
I've killed someone, but I need your help to help me figure out how I did it.
Snow was taken aback and sat quietly, openly just staring at the woman while she let the words sink in. As if attempting to make her feel more at ease, Teresa asked,
Is your dog adopted?
Her tone of voice having changed a little to sound more calming.
Yes.
Snow reached down and touched Shadow's head. His eyes closed as he began to feel more secure in the new surroundings, though she could see by the tension in his posture that he was ready to get up and leave at any time. Maybe it was her warm smile, her confidence, or the air of mystery around her. Snow was not sure if she liked Teresa, but she was drawn to her.
He's tall, reserved, and a little damaged.
Teresa said, interjecting.
Not unlike you.
That's quite an observation.
Snow said.
Though I believe I'm supposed to be the doctor and you the patient.
She made a mental note. Usually someone with such a psychological insight on a first meeting was quite well experienced in visiting with psychologists themselves.
Explain to me, what do you mean by you need help remembering how you killed someone?
Well,
Teresa said, reaching inside her big red tote bag and rummaging around.
the other morning I woke up to find these next to my bed.
She pulled out a stack of photos from her bag and handed them to Snow. She glanced through them quickly. They were a series of images of a dismembered body. The final photo was that of a woman's head impaled on what must have been some kind of a metal rod. The tips of her blonde hair dried with blood. Snow quickly placed the images upside down on the table as the waiter appeared with their coffees. If her cheeks were flushed before, they were the complete opposite now as she felt the blood drain from them. After the waiter walked away, she looked up at Teresa.
When were these taken?
Snow asked in a slightly higher tone than normal.
I'm not sure,
Teresa responded.
but they appeared on my nightstand 2 days ago.
She paused for a moment.
I'm not even sure where they were taken.
And you think you did this?
Snow asked, going through all the images again, a little more slowly this time, perhaps hoping to find some kind of a clue.
Oh yes, well, I think so. It feels right to admit that I did it.
Teresa said, not showing any panic or guilt, just being certain about the fact that she had killed someone but wasn't too sure exactly how she had gone about doing it.
Did you know this person?
Snow asked.
Yes,
Teresa replied as she emptied a sachet of sugar into her mug and stirred it. She sipped it to make sure she was happy with the sweetness of her hot drink, and then placed the mug in its saucer again.
she was my lover.
She finally said, looking at the photos from across the table.
She had it coming.
Snow was a little surprised by Teresa's lack of emotional connection to the story she was unfolding. She looked back at the photos.
Miss May, perhaps this is the kind of conversation we should have in a more private setting.
She looked around. The coffee shop was starting to get busier as lunchtime approached. She reached in her pocket and pulled out her business card.
Come to my office tomorrow morning and we can talk more.
Thank you for listening to the latest chapter in the Needle and Notion Mysteries series. To not miss a chapter, remember to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon for notifications. Please feel free to like the video and leave a comment. This is a small and growing channel, and every bit of interaction is always welcomed.